The interesting thing is that because music is sort of based on mathematics, the arpeggiation I sort of love, sort of how it deals with notes. Using a computer and a human together can make a beautiful piece of music, you know. I think there's definitely something behind it. It's matching science and art together, which I think is a great thing.
The Earth is not the center of the universe. Man descended from the apes. Mass can be converted to energy and vice versa, or space-time is curved around massive objects. The great discovery I'm about to tell you about is that man's greatest thoughts, including all of these earth-shattering notions, are achieved via conversation between biological neural networks. And the main driver of that thought process is nothing but lowly noise in the machine.
There are generally only two components to consciousness. The first of these is the spontaneous succession of images, sounds, sensations, and abstract thought that seems to miraculously appear from out of nowhere, what we call a stream of consciousness. The second of these components is what philosophers call the subjective feel of consciousness. What they typically argue is the most sublime aspect of consciousness that can never be attained in machines. The parallels with the creativity machine are unmistakable.
The creativity machine emulates some of the major feedback loops in the brain that produce thought. The cortex is bathed in heat, which in turn causes the diffusion of neurotransmitters through the synaptic clefts, driving it through a multimedia show. The thalamus, described by many as the eyeball within the brain, is connected to the cortex and in effect watching this multimedia show. And it has the ability to interact via this feedback loop with the cortex to drive it in various directions that are interesting to it. So in effect, the creativity machine is implemented within the brain. And when you think about the creativity machine as a model of cognition and intelligence, you basically need these two pieces. You need perception in the form of a perceptron. You need imagination in the form of an imagitron. They need to get together into a brainstorming session. So they have the essential features required to create a conscious, transhuman level intelligence. What kind of applications have we used creativity machines for? In the very beginning, there was a lot of activity in the area of materials discovery. Imagitrons imagining new potential materials, while perceptrons extracted those having the most utility or value in the search for new properties, new high-temperature superconductors, ultra-hard materials. You may have seen commercial products on TV that were invented by a creativity machine, but there's a catch. I'm contractually obligated not to tell you that they were invented by creativity machines. Targeted medical treatments, we can basically have a creativity machine generate an optimized treatment plan of medicine and regimens to cure disease. Beverage, food optimization, something that we did in the late 80s, early 90s. We've even done chip design. Design of very large-scale integrated circuits using a creativity machine. We've done automobile design, aircraft design. We've also recruited creativity machines to carry out information warfare, both the dark side and the light side. On the dark side, how best to carry out attacks on information infrastructures. On the positive side, how to protect, how to heal information infrastructures when under attack. Probably the greatest achievement of the creativity machine in recent years has been in building truly creative robots.
What you are watching is a crude robot being trained spontaneously by a creativity machine. Unlike popular humanoid robots controlled by human programming, this robot is in a sense dreaming and creating new ideas and plans of action. To achieve this behavior with conventional programming would be an immense task for any software designer. The creativity machine was able to accomplish it in minutes.
I think you're all aware that there are some popular science writers out there that are predicting phenomenal AI in 25 years. I've been told by people who are very high in government that my company can deliver this capability in just a couple of years.
What is the ultimate potential of the creativity machine? Applied on a large enough scale, the applications are almost limitless. What if the internet had a mind of its own? Combined with a totally autonomous, self-training artificial neural network object invented by the creativity machine called a stano, this may someday become a reality.
Currently, the internet is a vast online library that can be accessed by search engines and various intelligent agents. But I can imagine a day when that internet is actually thinking of its own, is becoming conscious. An internet that has converted many of its TCP/IP nodes into synthetic neurons. When we do that, we can essentially use the self-training artificial neural network paradigm so that this world brain can introspect, learn all available human content, and then use, of all things, human commerce as the noise in the system to perturb it to create new ideas, new plans of action to suit humanity, and to store that in an immense supernet that resides over the internet. Hollywood has anticipated the download of personality, of consciousness into machines. But they make the mistake typically of downloading into so-called von Neumann architectures where there are processing bottlenecks. And they're simply extrapolating the technology to the point where it's bright enough to absorb human consciousness. I don't think that's the case. In fact, a download to a von Neumann machine would be worse than suicide. What we need is a vehicle that looks very much, behaves very much like human consciousness. Number one, it has to be neural network based because the brain is neural network based. Secondly, it has to involve an imagatron being watched by a perceptron so that it can develop its own stream of consciousness and a perception of that stream of consciousness. In this case, we have the capability of prolonging the illusion of consciousness by combining with something that supports that illusion. This has not been accomplished. It's just a very broad brush description of what could take place. At the most general level, this plan for immortality involves the gradual marriage of creativity machine with human cognition. So essentially, two friends living alongside one another in a small room, and the name of the game is to begin to build interconnections between them gradually until the connection density between them rivals the connection density within the human brain. At that point, consciousness can diffuse back and forth between these two housings, if you will, in a nutshell game. We can't really know for sure where consciousness is residing. Now, if the creativity machine were housed in a large enough computational vehicle, its connections, its processing units would far outnumber its biological counterpart, and when biological death did occur, it would be as if a hangnail were dropping away.
The creativity machine paradigm also points to a way of understanding the really big picture. It may be a model for the structure of the universe itself, and even point to the existence of a cosmic consciousness.
Realize that when we think, when we generate ideas and plans of action, they are nothing more than activation patterns in the brain. One part generates, another part reacts with a judgment. Well, it turns out that there are portions of the universe that can separate from one another. And in one region, there can be a succession of patterns tantamount to our stream of consciousness. There can be also regions that react to that stream of consciousness, forming an opinion. That opinion may not correspond to our own. The ideas being generated may not correspond to our own, but nevertheless, there is a conversation going on between schizophrenic regions of space, and that qualifies as a template for our human consciousness. Memories and ideas are nothing more than activation patterns, states of the brain. When we look at the cosmos, we realize that these patterns of activation can also form there. If there is a rift somewhere in the universe where some part is activating into patterns, that's tantamount to the generation of ideas. This is the very template of cosmic consciousness. It doesn't take very sophisticated events for this to occur, but it is very much akin to the kind of model I proposed for machine consciousness, but it's occurring naturally. Consciousness, an alien consciousness, is all around us. So all we need to do is await our senses to grow sharper, to grasp that there is life, consciousness, cognition all around us. I become an animist of sort, and everything is filled with this consciousness. My philosophy is somewhere between Darwin and creationism, because there is a cosmic consciousness out there, not what we expected, but there is a template that is guiding evolution. And we see the end result in biological evolution. We see the human brain, we see imagitrons in conversation with perceptrons, this illusionary cycle of consciousness, essentially schizophrenic matter and energy. And that's a reflection, of course, of this primordial consciousness.
Will the creativity machine one day find its way into the world at large? Ultimately, the very same forces that inspire it may decide the fate of this radically new form of artificial intelligence, as well as our own sense of pride as a species.
I believe that we're entering a judgment period. It won't be marked by any kind of apocalyptic battles or the demise of the earth. Instead, it will be marked by a great anxiety. Do we embrace this entity and its accompanying concepts, or do we carry out business as usual, eking out our existences, banging each other over the head for the last dollar? Do we keep creating cool myths to make ourselves feel better about ourselves, and then finally dying an agonizing death? Now, in preparation for these days, I asked you to begin to ask yourselves the question: if one does not embrace and comprehend this concept, is it not tantamount to reckless homicide?